Hi, everyone. This is Joel, and this is the next morning after we recorded this podcast that you're about to hear. And I just edited everything, so I also listened to it, and I have to say I'm quite surprised of the depth and the intelligence and the thought that goes into this startup. I wasn't familiar with her before Stephen introduced her to the podcast, and I am very empowered after hearing her story, but also hearing the motivation behind starting Decompress for Katie, because it's something that's very near and dear to me and to Stephen. We talk about it every once in a while, health and wellness in the workplace, and how you set a environment for yourself to thrive, not just for 1 year, but basically for a lifetime. And so I'm really excited for you guys to listen to this. We're going to link all her socials at the end of the video. We're also going to put a QR code that she provided so you can join the wait list for Decompress and maybe even tell your company about it. As always, like, share, and subscribe. And I really hope you enjoyed the episode as much as we did. Thank you, guys. Love you. Bye-bye. Welcome to Signal. Katie, where does this podcast find you?
On the best of Fridays. It's sunny for one, so as a Kel, I need all the sun exposure I can get, trust me.
It's amazing to see you here. We're across we're at two different time zones. Actually, wait, you're in Germany, right?
She's
So,
an hour back.
okay,
So
yeah,
we're
so
in
three time zones across many. It's amazing for us. Yeah, it's amazing for us to all be able to connect here on a Friday morning. Signal is kind of interesting podcast format because, well, first I'm a tech guy and I'm in marketing and I've been an entrepreneur in startups and things like that, but mostly in tech. And Joel has this amazing also technology and business background, but he's also got a sports background. And then we meet with you today, and you are a young entrepreneur who you're launching an amazing company with a brilliant idea, and you also have a sports background. We'll get into that in a little bit. And this is a very sort of you'll start to see a theme here as listeners are watching and listening to Signal. You're hearing a lot about leadership styles, but those transcend and connect. They're transversal in multiple places in multiple worlds. So as we get started, it would be awesome if we could hear a little bit about who you are, Katie Murray, and Decompress. Give us a background on it, and what is it all about?
I love that. Thank you. And thanks for having me as well. I just love to be here. So obviously I'm Katie. I'm the founder of Decompress. So we are a wellbeing tech startup creating AI guided kind of decompression pods and tools for modern workplaces. So I hate this phrase, but I'm on a mission to build systems that actually see the unseen and help people feel human again at work. Work in itself is quite a nice kind of umbrella term because we work with companies on site, but we also work with entrepreneurs themselves who don't have the luxury of a HR department. So, not having that HR department yourself, I found by my own praxis, it's quite a meta experience where I'm having to effectively temper building something and not burning myself out in the process of building a burnout prevention models. It's quite a meta praxis, and in a way it's actually helped me. I've kind of healed through building this itself, which is it's powerful. This stuff is super powerful. And I think my own experience coming into this, I didn't even know I had ADHD, right? So getting my diagnosis just a couple months ago really helped clarify why I've been so stressed my entire life. I'll give you a bit of context as well. I was actually born dead. Okay, now I know this is super dramatic, but sets the tone entirely because I was stressed in the womb, guys. I was literally stressed before I entered the world. And so to go on to life mission, I've always had a predisposition for stress. And so coupled with ADHD, it's like a radar. So every job I've ever had, they've mishandled stress. And I'm like, this is something that is inevitable. And it's a superpower that I have now leaned into.
Talk to me a little bit about your definition of stress. I'd really be curious about your definition of stress and what's a necessary stress and what's an unnecessary stress.
That's a good question because I think, relatively speaking, what everyone, how much stress people can experience and withstand is wholly subjective. I think a certain degree of stress is always good. We do want a certain level of cortisol, but I think when it's chronic and the key point is unsupported, right? I think that's the key point here. When it's unsupported, it's rife and then nothing exists in isolation. So yeah, I think stress is important, absolutely. But I think when there's an imbalance of that stress with the support and infrastructure to help that, that's where we go wrong entirely. And that's when people have issues. And I think that when I say nothing exists in isolation, like if you are inundated with stress, I only have to look to my own praxis to look at what my habits were. And on reflection, how often do we ever really reflect on our habits? Not very often. And I think for me, when I've been in my like super stressed environments, my habits have actually been quite indicative of an underlying issue. And I think if we were to actually audit our habits and our lifestyle, we would come out a lot more empowered. But the point is, we never do. And then to be honest as well, it manifests not just in your habits, but it's like your health, right? Health is wealth. So to kind of come back to COVID, it's like a couple of years after COVID, everyone's forgotten this phrase, health is wealth, but it's so key. And I think it's all, like I say, it's inevitable you're going to have stress in your job, but what needs to complement that is an infrastructure that supports you in spite of that and gives you the tools. I think this is the key point, is that if you've got stress and you don't have the tools to be able to navigate that, it's so overwhelming. And the key point is that burnout is so chronic. Sometimes you don't even know you're burnt out until you're like in the ER room, or you're off sick, or in my case, you get fired for being burnt out. And I'm like, that's entirely what's wrong with the system. It is diagnostic and it is not preventative. And we know prevention is better than cure. And yet, zoom out into the West more broadly, look at the state of the NHS. I'm like, we are waiting for things to get to boiling point, to the point where it's actually harder to kind of reverse that. So prevention is absolutely key here.
You mentioned stress, but burnout is a key word. We talk about the pandemic effect, and we talk about the pandemic effect sometimes with respect to the innovation that came out of the pandemic, and remote work is one of those key innovations. By the way, been in the tech industry for 35 years. We had remote work. We had remote access. People were all working at remote sites. Technicians, they were mobile. They didn't work in an office. But all of a sudden overnight, we had this revolution. It was, as a result of the pandemic, and all of a sudden everyone's working from home. Nobody can go into the office. And then over time, there's some opportunity to actually optimize the workforce and say, hey, maybe some people can work from home, and maybe some people have to come in hybrid sometime during the week. But what I don't think we made this decision in a split second because we had to. And then I think some people, it was very easy for them to do, and others, it created a lot of stress in their lives, and it was very difficult to adopt. And I wonder if the pandemic was not just a catalyst for this new way of working, but also it was sort of a breaking point for what you're trying to tackle with Decompress. It sort of opened up Pandora's box.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think COVID in itself offered quite a moment where, as a kind of world, we could pivot, right? And I do think hybrid remote working it offers people a flexibility and I think an autonomy over their own life that I think most people are kind of craving. I know we didn't have distractions. So I think for the first time, people were engaging in important dialogues. I mean, I'm pretty sure in COVID as well, we had Black Lives Matter and people were like really, really on it. And I think that was such a beautiful moment where we kind of came together and pivoted into something that was so much greater than what was before. I mean, you look at, there's so many countries now that are piloting like 4-day work weeks. And I just feel like these are all byproducts of COVID and like testing models. And I think this is kind of the key of Decompress, is that it's testing models that are no longer working, right? Like I'm not here to reinvent the wheel if it works, but that's the caveat, if it works. And I think what COVID offered us was an opportunity to actually just think differently about existing models. And from that, I just think the world has exploded. But with that has then come, remote workers. I did remote work myself. And as a case study for Decompress, if you're not in the office, it's actually, yes, you win more time in terms of flexibility and control over your day, but there's much less support generally for those who aren't on site. And I, in this remote teaching role, was going through quite a lot of stuff and there was no support for me whatsoever, which is quite isolating if you're remote working. The boundaries are quite blurred between personal and professional, especially if you don't even have an office, right? So I'm like, yeah, I think it definitely offered us a brand new landscape. But I think with that, what we're now seeing is where there's kind of holes in it because we've not people haven't been prioritized. We live in a profit over people paradigm.
Yeah.
And I think to shift that, that's exactly what Decompress is here to do, is to shift that narrative where people come first, because people deserve that. Like, the people are your life force of your company. I'm like, without them, what do you have? So COVID definitely brought like new landscapes and new horizons, but with that, I think there's further iteration absolutely required.
So now you have this world where we now have this flexibility to work from home, and we can work in the office and all that. And that's great. And we have, probably, I think, more of these video conferencing calls that we want to have. I mean, I can look at my own schedule. When I start work around 8:30 or 9 o'clock Eastern, and I'm on the calls until like 6:30 at night, and there's 0 minutes between calls. They're literally wedged. Right. And then there's overlapping calls, and we joke at work, we'll say, I'm two timing on meetings because I have, my iPhone on one meeting and I have my iMac, I have my Mac on another meeting. It's like, you're like, okay, so I can't be in two places at once. Well, maybe I can virtually, but now there's all this stress of being on all the time. And of course, this thing never stops. So, I think of the world that you're creating with Decompress, the opportunity you're creating. And it's not just about being in the office and finding that safe place in the office where you can literally get away from all of it in sort of the distractions, the auditory, the visual distraction, the things that are effectively weighing down on your shoulders in the workplace. But you can do this at home. You can do this at home. You can do it at work. You could do it on the go. And when I looked at what you were doing with Decompress, I was really excited because it's transcending the physical world. And the physical world is what, we all feel comfort with. We understand, we know. If we could get into a safe pod and listen and be immersed and take away the distractions. But some days we can't do that because we're in the car or we're at home working and we're wedged 100% all day in Zoom calls. So kind of give us your view, like give us some use cases in both worlds, if you could, how, our listeners, I'm sure, would love to understand how they could apply Decompress,
what's available. So, I mean, initially we're rolling out an app as kind of the priming tool for pod readiness. And we do already have a couple companies that are interested in piloting, which is really exciting because what I want to do is use the MVP of the app to co-create what Decompress is going to look like. And I think that's such a key point for me, is co-creation. In terms of use studies, so initially we are going to have pods on site on site at the company. As a kind of future iteration of that, we have considered like mobile units so that if you are, remote working, that you have access to something that, if you don't have a pod in your home, like what are you going to do? It needs to be like quick, accessible, integrated into your daily life. And that's why it's important for us to work with the company. So in terms of process, we actually start by doing like a wellbeing audit that I've built, and it honors the nuance of pathways. So between being part of a company, being an entrepreneur, or even just as someone who outside of their professional life just wants to optimize themselves and get to know themselves a little bit better.
So you're bringing that world and the use cases in the physical world.
Yes.
And so what are the types of things that you would do in the physical world with that pod? If you had a really, really bad day, tons of meetings, bosses on your case, you've got a tough client, you're just feeling miserable at work. Like when you get inside one of these pods, what happens? What is it like?
The process starts before you even step into the pod. That's the relationship with the app. So unlike, Headspace or, a gym membership, these things exist in wholly separate worlds, the physical and the digital. They're not bridged together. So with Decompress, like I say, the app is that priming tool, but it's also that private, anonymous space for the user to calibrate their settings so that, say they are feeling super burnt out. We're playing with biometrics because that would make it a lot there'd be a lower lift for the user to have to, because if you are burnt out, you don't necessarily have the energy to be doing all of this anyway. But the point is that say we did, the data would then feed into the app, and then the pod is effectively waiting for you. It's ready for you based off of those inputs. But the caveat again is that once you step into the pod, if you want an immersive landscape that's preset for you, we kind of have that built in. But the key is that you are co-creating what the inside of that looks like between sound, audio, lighting, to the degree of immersion you want to even experience visually and orally. Like, what does the visual and kind of soundscape look like? But the key thing is that I think with a lot of well-being models, you have to contort yourself to fit inside that model, whereas Decompress kind of engineers it in a reverse way. The pod responds to you versus than the other way around. So if you don't have the language, let alone the energy to be inputting all this crap, like the AI that's core inside of the app knows you well enough over time that it can create an environment for you based on kind of user preferences. And this is where kind of in the onboarding of the app, there's a lot of questions, right? Because we're effectively building what your app's going to look like. So in a sense, it's different for everyone. But yeah, it's relational at its core, and it's not there to fill in the gaps for you. It's a blank canvas for you to fill in as and how you want to.
So what you talked through as how the app learns and influences the experience of the pod is absolutely phenomenal. As I was thinking through this, I was thinking about a use case where you could adapt this technology to the home where you don't necessarily have a pod, where the app could connect to your smart lights, to your smart Sonos sound system, to maybe even some other things in that are smart, like fragrances and things like that you might have in your home or your apartment. It
Yeah.
knows you're having a crappy day. By the time you open your door, the whole environment is set the way that you.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah, because I think, and I had thought of that, of like, how often do we just quickly, I don't want to say her name, Alexa, 'cause she's right there, but
Yeah, exactly.
do you come in and you're like, put
Yeah.
this music on or do it, preset my lighting and my temperature for this time. It's very much the same as that, except it's even more nuanced and it's reading the data like on a second by second basis.
Yeah.
So, say on your journey home, your bus breaks down, you get, I don't know, there's a palaver on the bus. By the time you get home, that setting might actually be that might be a feeling from an hour ago. And so the live updating of that system is so key, because we've said this before, Stephen, we change minute to minute, second to second, hour to hour, week to week. We are constantly in different phases. So it's having something that honors that nuance, holds space for it, basically creates like a roadmap for you. But the key thing is that regardless of how burnt out you are, Decompress is empowering you to know that you can get yourself out of this. And I think I am like a living case study of this. Obviously, I'm building the app just now, iterating it, and I am using myself as a guinea pig to see, like, when I'm burnt out, what's the appeal? I downloaded another app. It's called How We Feel, and it's an incredible app. But I actually get triggered by its notifications asking me, how are you feeling today? I'm like, if I haven't told you, read between the lines. That kind of inference is the USP of Decompress, because the AI we're playing with whether she's called D or Ray. The I of Ray being lowercase, the former being uppercase. So it's nice, rest aware intelligence. But the idea is that she's not static. She sits in dialogue, but very much follows your lead. And that's so key, because she's not sentient by design. And I think people need to kind of remember that, because especially in the age of AI that we're in just now, there are people falling in love with AI. There are people, like, there's such extreme cases of it that we have to safeguard it at the same time.
So I'm listening to you tell this amazing story and this amazing business strategy around what you're building and this product that you're creating. And I think to myself, okay, you've given us a big backstory, and that was a lovely backstory on sort of the stressing your life and kind of coming up from birth, right? What motivates you? Like, I'm really intrigued to understand, like, how'd you get here mentally? Why did you decide you wanted to be a founder of a startup? Like, there are certain people out there that are really good at being founders, and there's some really interesting personalities. Like, they're obnoxious personalities and super engaging like, so what motivates you to want to be a founder of a startup in this space? And then, like, who are your influences? Like, who are your role models? Like, who do you look up to that sort of are the North Star for you as you kind of develop this business?
So it was being fired for being burnt out was the biggest catalyst for me. And it was just before Christmas, and I thought that's why not everyone in management should be in management, because you
Yeah.
need the skills to be able to anyway. So I'm fired just before Christmas, and infinitely it's more stressful. But after that, I kind of say to myself, right, I have kind of an option here. I can either cry about this, which I did, or I can build a solution. So I definitely cried. It was needed, necessary, but then
Yes.
thought, let me build a solution, because between just conversations I have in my life anyway, between family, friends, co-workers, just people in general, stress is absolutely everywhere. It's insidious, and we've almost normalized just how rife it is. So I think for me, I kind of looked at on reflection and was a bit like, I've had so many jobs, right? And then in hindsight, I know it was because every job has mishandled stress. And so in terms of experience across sectors, I have such a cross slice of experience that I just said, you know what? For all the fire and the passion that I have, I am someone who is heavily involved in activism and activism through art. So artivism, I always have been. For me, I just kind of thought, well, I'm experiencing this stress consistently, and I know thousands of other people are. I'm like, let me stop waiting for someone else to build something that I need, and let me just build it myself, because no one's going to know better than me what we need to build in this space, if that makes sense.
So your founder story is really built out of purpose. And they say necessity is the mother of invention. Like, if it's not there and I know it needs to be done, I build it because I need it. And you're connecting your journey with Decompress with something you knew was missing in this world. And that's amazing. There's this other side of being a founder, which is painful, which is you put yourself out there. You're asking for money. You're building business plans. You're trial and error. You're getting a lot of no's. You get probably 99 no's and one, maybe half a maybe and a half a yes. Yeah. And if one of the potential funding sources of your as an entrepreneur was through one of the organizations. Was it
the King's Trust?
Yeah, King's Trust. Yeah.
Yeah, the King's Trust. So she's backed by Charles. Yeah. So to be honest, I had applied for it. I'd applied for the King's Trust last January, once I was, fired, burnt out, didn't get it. And I was like, that's absolutely fine, because I don't really have a product yet. I just know there's an itch here I need to scratch. And then it was January of this year that I kind of had quite a awakening. So I'm quite spiritual in myself anyway. You probably tell that from my language in terms of energy, etc. But I actually had a Reiki session, and it just absolutely transformed me, myself, my relationship to self. And the main thing she said to me was that my throat chakra was blocked. And she was like, you need to speak your truth. And I think coming back into who is the hero, I'm kind of the hero of my own damn story, because I've come from a place of feeling so disempowered in my life that to now be the architect of that solution, I'm like, that's the most empowering thing anyone can feel. And I'm like, that's the feeling I want people to have when they rock up to work, when they leave work. I want there to be a relationship of people first. Because I feel when people first are looked after, they don't leave. They don't leave. How employees stay with the company. And it's not saying Decompress is here to retain employees. It's here to optimize the daily praxis of a worker. And those needs are so nuanced second by second that, yeah. So for me, I just think I've been in that place where you're so disempowered, your habits are awful, you're eating like crap, sorry, I don't know if you swear on this as well.
Of course, yeah. We go deep on that.
Yeah. We're a swearing podcast. We're a cussing podcast. So.
Yeah. So I've been in that place where, your habits are rubbish, you're not looking after yourself in every capacity, which we all know makes that feeling worse, but it's a response, it's a reaction to, it's basically a symptom of not feeling equipped enough to deal with it. And I'm like, that's where employers have a responsibility. And I think maybe I consider myself the Pied Piper of well-being, but there's a form of stewardship that's involved here when you have a team underneath you, or even around you. It's they deserve more than a paycheck. That is something I have genuinely always believed. And I think now people's paychecks aren't even covering things. So you're it's not a source of financial stress that's adding to it. And I'm like I say, this doesn't exist in isolation. So from a position of like my own heroic arc, I'd say the last kind of 8-9 months have been the most healing. I took a science of well-being course as well that was run by the University of Yale, which I think in and of itself as an institution is quite a hallmark moment, because I feel like well-being can sometimes be put down as like quite wishy-washy. So yeah, I think it's really important where we're at. And I think I'm excited about where we're headed, but I do think the reason why employers are at such a stasis now with what the hell to do with employee well-being is because they've never prioritized it. And
Yeah.
I appreciate also that people are products of culture and their own learning, etc. So if people have got to a place of management, CEO, there's no course in becoming a CEO. When you become a CEO, you have to make sure that you as a person, in terms of your values, are you able to lead a team? What is your emotional intelligence? Like, do you have emotional literacy? Are you able, and if you don't have that in yourself, I'm not surprised companies have reached such a standstill. So I'm excited about where we're headed, but I just think a lot of companies don't know what the hell to do.
Let me jump in on that, because whenever I see companies that have, or at least pretend to have, a big emphasis on employee well-being and having the most flexible models with remote work and the Twitter campuses with where you can get 3 meals a day for free and have your yoga class during lunch. And it makes sense that you say, well, we're doing this, especially in this day and age where, due to demographic changes and just changes in educational pipelines, that you have trouble sometimes finding good employees that fit
Mm.
your needs as an employer. That's a very solid point to make, to say, okay, we're going to try to increase the experience here so that people want to work at this place because it's a fun place to be. What I'm curious about is, and because you said, sometimes the concept of well-being, whatever it is, if it's a spiritual one or even a psychological one, there's a lot of arguments, I believe, that entrepreneurs and company owners will make against that it's wishy-washy and
Mm.
somewhat unnecessary. What's your argument on switching the narrative, not just for an employer to make an effort in making the workspace a fun place to be, a safe place to be, not just from a standpoint of I want to make the most profit out of each employee, but also to have a mission or a vision about, okay, I want this place to be something nurturing, to be something safe for my people to work in.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when we look at how much companies lose in terms of like, yes, we might make a lot of profit, but what is the reverse side of that? How much are you losing in terms of P&L, sick loss, like absenteeism is absolutely rife. And I'm just like, I'd probably say the ROI is that yes, you might be making profit, but I always feel like there's more, like we could always be doing more. And I sometimes think that suggests a point of like complacency. And I think the whole paradigm shift for me is that when you put people before profit, your profit 10x's. The ROI is that you are getting employees who are nourished, like they are well, they are showing up as their best selves, they are loyal, but it's a dialogic relationship. If I'm showing up as my best self and I'm not getting that support, there's an entire mismatch here.
Well, it's interesting. The idea is that companies are not necessarily they're thinking about wellness in the sense of it offering inside a benefits package. I mean, I'll speak for the US, right?
Hmm.
They think about like, oh, well, I'm going to make sure you have this healthcare and, this dental plan and this healthcare plan and long-term care and things like that. If you have, disability and things like that. But like, it's always in the other category, like this thing about like a gym membership or a few companies I've worked for give their employees a subscription to things like Calm, or there's Better Health, which is online therapy. It's almost like health, wellness, and even mental health tools and mental health services are sort of in that other category. It's not like up top, I think what's kind of exciting and invigorating about what you've been talking about is that you turn this stuff on its side and you say, look, if we don't have people that feel good and come to work, we're not going to get good work out of them.
Yeah, exactly. And I know just from my own experience, like when I've been going through it, when I've been working places, you can't just, I know it's so easy to say, just leave that energy at the door, but I actually just think it's so redundant because it's quite hard to switch off. And it also depends what the pressing issue is. And I know myself being a neurospicy baby that at the end of the day, a lot of environments aren't tailored toward me. They just aren't. And so the return on investment is people feeling seen. And when people feel seen and when space is held for them to be the architect of their own greatness, I'm like, you unlock something in them that goes far beyond loyalty. What you have then is, I don't even know what the word is, but I feel like employee almost sounds kind of redundant. But the point is, you have people showing up as their best selves. Like, why wouldn't you want that? And the thing is that there's always a subtext inside of a team. There's always a subtext. I've worked in so many places where, because things aren't being dealt with, there is a undercurrent of tension, which is just another source of stress. And it's like, if you're not addressing any of these things, like, yeah, sure, you might be making profit, but what the hell does the state of your company look like? You know, and I just think that is the true test and true kind of, yeah, test of an actually healthy team. So yeah, I mean, I look at the working landscape right now and I'm like, it's just so generic. There is absolutely no nuance in terms of the benefits that they get, but even insofar as how they work. You know, how are you tasking your teams with jobs? Like, in terms of even just what are the timings? I feel like honoring people's natural rhythms. Are they morning people? Do they work better at 10 p.m.? What is the environment that works best for them? Just being shoved in a corporate office with cubicles, that's the most like, it doesn't make me want to show up as my best self, you know? And yet companies will expect you to still bring that best self in spite of being absolutely under-supported. I remember one job, I'll give you an example. So I was commuting for, I think it was 3 hours a day. So by the time I got to my desk, I was fucked. I was absolutely goosed. And the day's just starting. And I remember there was one time where, my goodness, I think I was just going through, again, some stuff in my own personal life. There was literally nowhere. We were working at a warehouse. We were working above our warehouse. I'm not going to name the name of the company, but I was going through something so horrific that I was on a Teams call and was spoken to in a way that just triggered, was just kind of the last straw. And there was nowhere for me to decompress. And I cried in the stairwell. And I'm like, that is exactly the problem that we have here. There was a toilet cubicle, absolutely cool, but there's 20 of us with one toilet cubicle. I'm like, if I'm sitting in there having a cry, what's to stop Alan from marketing coming and just needing the
Right.
toilet? Like, there's no space for you to actually just sit with that feeling. And I'm like,
Terrible.
how many times do you just, even from the commute into work, if you're driving, you get cut off in a lane and you're just like, road rage. We've normalized so many things that are actually symptomatic of something so much deeper. You know, I hate the commute. My God. I'm like, that's probably why people love working from home so much. The energy on a commute is fucking horrific. And I just read something this morning about TfL are basically having a week's long strike
Yeah.
in September because fatigue, pay, hours worked. I'm like, people don't feel heard and seen. And I'm like, if you give more, it's gasoline to a fire. And I'm like, these moments are so pivotal that, yeah, I mean, moving down from Scotland, the first time I ever got on a tube, I was like, why is everyone so miserable? And I get it now. I've been here for long enough. I get it now. I'm trying not to be part of that same energy, but the Science of Wellbeing course that I did, Dr. Laurie Santos, absolutely fantastic. She did an exercise with the group of students, and it was like on their commute into university in the morning, there was kind of 3 data sets. There was one who would just do as they normally did. 2, you actively try and make a conversation with one person, and 3, you're actively like avoiding people, which most people fall into that category naturally, let's be honest. Who do you think was the happiest data set? Who do you think it was? The ones just doing as they normally did, actively trying to speak to people, or actively ignoring people?
I would think it would be number 2, like people trying to engage and get feeling from somebody.
Yeah. I'm like, people are craving this connection, and yet we have almost internalized this normalcy that people don't want to be disturbed. When in reality, the truth is so much farther from that.
It's a societal issue outside of work. I think we have put so much faith in technology, and we become absorbed by these virtual worlds in the digital world that we actually have more in common with the digital world. Kids have friends, but they've never met them. They're online. I have my sons growing up in the last, 5, 10 years, playing video games and being on Discord and things like that. And they say, oh, my friend, blah, blah, blah. And I've never heard of this friend before. Are they from school? No, no, I know I'm on Discord, Donnie or whatever. And you're like, okay, that's who they call their friends. They don't know their last name. They don't know where they live. They don't know their story. They don't play ball in the backyard together. We have left the world of the physical and we have entered the world of the digital. This becomes more important to us than anything around us. People become less important. And the people on the other side of this thing become more important. The idea that you would encourage people to connect and be their very best at work, I think that's fascinating because I think we need that. We need that badly.
Absolutely.
And by the way, we need to do it virtually. We need to do it physically. But we need to connect. We need to understand one another, share with one another, engage one another. We need to find solutions with one another, right? And it transcends work, it's activism, it's faith, it's all these things. And we have so much together that we can accomplish. Why would we ever want to be alone, right? I have one question for you because I'm fascinated by this. And it's really a parallel to Joel's world. Joel and I have talked on countless podcasts about discipline on the field and discipline in the boardroom. And I know, and I mentioned it in the intro, that you have a background in professional bodybuilding. So give us your view of the corollary between sports and business and that red thread of discipline between the two.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'd be able to give you it in one sentence. It's consistency. It's showing up on the days where you do not even feel like doing it. Because everyone has the days where it's easy, right? It's motivated. Yeah, I'm in the mood to go to the gym. I'm in the mood to do the thing. But what about the thing you don't want to do? Or what about the thing that's requiring a lot more mental bandwidth and power to do it? What if it's not in your natural skill set? So many potentialities there. But the point is, the discipline and being able to show up regardless. 90% of life is just showing up. The other 10% is what happens when you get there. But if you never get there, you will never know. And I think sometimes we cut off our nose to spite our face sometimes. So for me, it's quite interesting actually, because pre-bodybuilding, I'll be fully transparent here, my discipline was shocking. And I often think the reason why I then went into bodybuilding was for me to be able to temper and learn that skill. Because in bodybuilding, there's no space for, well, I just didn't feel like it. Discipline is almost synonymous with bodybuilding and professional sports.
To do that from, obviously the kind of achievement and the kind of results that you're able to achieve, it's amazing.
That's the key thing for me, because the process was more important than the product. Yes, by the end of it, I looked incredible, absolutely. But it was more about who I became in that process, that by the end of it, I literally just woke up one day and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this bodybuilding thing. And I think sometimes we get so attached to an identity that stepping away from it feels like the scariest thing in the world. But I very much led with that transparently online. I was like, bodybuilding no longer resonates with me. So I've outgrown it in a sense, literally. No, but I've moved on to, I've stepped out of a timeline that once served me, absolutely, but it no longer honors who I am today. And that is a product of that journey. So now, and that was literally January, stepping into a timeline that did align with everything that I had learned. I was like, I now have the discipline, I have the passion, I've got the fire, my God. So now it's about utilizing those things and actually helping the world. I know saying I'm going to change the world feels like a crazy platitude, but genuinely, my life experiences and my mission is to get people to a place where they're no longer burnt out. That is an ideal scenario, but to have people who are so in tune with themselves, their energy rhythms, what they need, how they decompress. A lot of people don't even know how they decompress. I think if you ask people that, how do you decompress in real time if you don't have access?
That would have actually been my next question. If there's any techniques for someone that doesn't have access to decompress or their company doesn't give a crap about that, what are some, maybe one or two techniques that you would recommend for somebody to sort of levitate themselves from a stressful situation, to get your nerves in check, to deal with a situation like you just explained, where you're sitting in a staircase and crying? Because obviously, regulating your nervous system is a big skill that takes a long time to master, but I'd just be curious what your ideas would be there. if
Yeah.
you don't have access to something as amazing as Decompress.
Then you need to download it. No, I'm joking. What I would say, I mean, there's a lot of, I remember when I first started out here, I wanted to like give people a lot of actionables. And I think I designed something that was like 5 workplace well-being kind of tools that will actually help. And one of them is like a workplace kind of audit. And now this is where Decompress as the orchestrator becomes quite important, because doing this on your own can feel like an uphill battle. It can feel, well, I don't even know where the heck to start. So something like a workplace audit, whereby anonymously auditing your workload, right? What are the things that aren't matched to your skill set? Is there a better person who could have that task? Assessing like what are your skill sets? What are your strengths? There's something called I think it's the VIA character strength survey. And it says that if you're not using like the top 4 of your strengths in your work, you are going to be miserable. So it's not even about changing the task itself. It's knowing the employee first and foremost, but then being able to make that task relational. Or is there someone else in your team who is better suited to that task? So something like anonymity is a key point here, because I think no one wants to be, at the front, super vulnerable when you're inside of a company, because sometimes speaking your truth can come with, well, am I going to get fired? Which
Can be scary.
Yeah, I think that's exactly
Sometimes there are environments that don't have any psychological safety. You can't speak up. You can't air your grievance.
And HR is there for the company. It's not there for you.
That's right.
That's the reality of it. And so Decompress for me is like, I'm actually not, I mean, yes, I'm interested in the company, but my affiliation and my loyalties with the team. It's with the employees. It's not with the company. So a big thing for me is definitely like knowing your skill set, like what are your strengths and can you bring them to the tasks that are set for you, and auditing like what tasks energize you and what tasks absolutely drain you. And I've had a couple conversations with people who have kind of asked that same question, and I know a lot of companies now are moving toward things like well-being committees and like happiness managers and things like that. And that's a really good shift in the right direction. But we need to know, okay, who are you putting in those roles? What is their level of emotional literacy first and foremost? Like, it's quite a chicken and egg type scenario, because where do you begin? Yes, setting up the happiness or well-being team is absolutely great in theory, but who's looking after that well-being committee in and of itself? So yeah, definitely.
It's a bit like starting a DEI initiative in a company. It's a checkbox if you don't implement it, right? You just say, we have it, it's in the policy, but you don't really implement it. If you say happiness and well-being is important, it's integral to our employee productivity, it's integral to how we operate as a company. We're employee first, we're thinking employee first, but you don't implement it.
Exactly.
You don't, to Joel's tool, what are they didn't bring me any tools. They didn't give me the questionnaire, the audit, so I could kind of noodle on what problems I may have day to day and why I'm so stressed. They just say, oh, we've got it, don't worry. And you could download, Calm or something like that because it's in your benefits package.
Which I think is like really good. Again, it's really good in intention, but what's then missing is the integration of that system into or onto your company's infrastructure. And that's where Decompress is different, because we are not only like offering the tools and everything on site, but we are actively working with you to integrate that. So we have like Decompress mentors, because it's very tech heavy. There are definitely like facilitators to kind of be the human first countering of that. So I don't want it to be too tech heavy. This is the thing. It's people first by design.
It's people. Yeah. It's about people. So I guess the big question that everybody's going to ask, and we're at the tail of our time, is how do we find out more? How do we get access to this technology? How do we connect with you? So maybe if you, as a call to action, you can give us, I know we have a QR code. We'll supply that with the podcast and with, as we promote it on our social channels, but quick, kind of where people can find more.
So I'm on Instagram. I've got we have a Decompress Instagram, but it's very much waitlist members only, so it's quite exclusive. But with the access to the waitlist, you could be part of that first wave. So definitely via my Instagram, which is KAGS, so it's KAGSSS, or the waitlist that these guys will pop up for you. That's kind of our holding incubator space right now. just because we are, like I say, we're pre-seed, we're pre-revenue. But at this point, yeah, if you are, you can also get me at my email. So katie@decompress.com. Obviously, the E in decompress is a hyphen. It's phonetic. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is that like going for aspiring entrepreneurs is definitely to build what you need. So in the world, like what is a problem that you face? Build something that doesn't exist. Like what can I build that no one else is giving me? And I think that authenticity is so key in what you build. But yeah, I'm definitely on socials. Yeah, I'd probably say social media is the way to get me, or email.
I am hoping, by the way, that we can promote and we can get access. This podcast will be accessible to investors and customers, clients, enthusiasts who are interested in this, people who are looking for this kind of solution. We will do our very best to help tell your story with you. Katie, it has been a fantastic session. You'll be back, by the way, for certain.
Absolutely.
You are a great one. You are a great podcast co-host for us,
and we have so much more to talk about. I was like, how long is this?
We could part two this one, probably even like cut it in half. It has been an absolute.
Join the wait list to get part two.
Exactly.
We got to drive traffic to the QR codes. Yeah, you get to unlock the Easter egg if you get. All right, so Katie, it has been wonderful. We are so thankful for you joining us today, and we hope that you have an amazing stress-free day. Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much, guys. Happy Friday.
Thank you.
Too.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode of Signal. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed the conversation, follow us on your favorite podcast platform and share it with someone who'd love it too. See you next time.